All right, so you're considering making somewhere in Central Texas your home, and that could possibly be Wimberley. I mean, it's one of my favorite suburbs by far. If you can consider it a suburb, it's a little farther out. But anyway, Wimberley could be a great spot for you. So you're doing a little bit of research on that. I mean, after all, Wimberley is known for the Blue Hole, for Jacob's Well, for all of the artists and all the shops and things downtown. Now it's getting a heck of a name for its live music scene and just hill country beauty. Devil's Backbone. God, have you been to Devil's Backbone yet? It's one of my favorite places. Loved it since I was a kid. But anyway, I digress a little bit. The whole point of this video is to talk a little bit about what I think is going to happen in 2024 for the Wimberley housing market. I'm a real estate broker here locally. My name's Chris Peshek. I am a part of the Peshek Properties group. That is our brokerage. And I live in Dripping Springs, about 15 minutes up the road from Wimberley. And it's, like I said, it's one of my favorite suburbs. So I've been analyzing what's going on, and I want to make some predictions this year on my favorite suburbs. So in this video, we're talking about Wimberley. All right, let's get into it now. What I did for this information is I went and researched kind of what our par, and I'll say par interest rates are right now. They're about 6.7. And I see people getting better rates than that. I see people getting worse rates than that. But this is just kind of that average number that, won't cost you too much to get this rate unless you've got a poor credit score or something like that. But about 6.7. And so what I'm doing with this methodology, and you may not agree with it, and that's fine. If you don't agree with it, put your comments down below and tell me why you don't agree with it. I'm not a statistician. I'm a science guy, and like data. So, I could be wrong and you might be able to convince me otherwise. But anyway, what I'm doing with my methodology in this is just going back and trying to find 2 points in time. I'll say fairly recently, in the last 20, 30 years, where interest rates were similar to what they are now, and take a look at what was happening in the market then, what that year ended up being, and then try to draw some similarities and extrapolate kind of what I think is going on in 2024. So the 2-year period, or the two periods that I found similar interest rates, is 2002 and 2006. What I did at that point is I went over a 3-year period. So for 2002, I did 01, 02, and 03. And then for 06, I did 05, 06, 07, obviously. And I went in and looked at what the appreciation or depreciation was in the Wimberley market in those time periods, just to try to draw out kind of historically what happens when we're in this environment. And I'll note, in that 02 period, we were just coming out of the dot-com bust. Austin lost a lot of jobs at that point, kind of similar to what's been happening in the last year and a half. We've had a lot of tech jobs go away. And it seemed like, there was a little bit less disposable money in the area. That kind of leads us into that 02 period. And then that 06 period was leading up to what I guess they call the Great Financial Crisis or something, after the housing bubble that really blew up in Florida and a few other states, that coincidentally didn't really do a whole lot of damage here in Texas. So that's kind of the methodology of what I was looking at to make these predictions. The other thing that I do want to point out is this is a prediction, right? I could be wrong on this, but I feel pretty strongly, knowing that historically Central Texas, we really don't see a lot of, I'll call them downturns in the market, but, where we just lose a lot of value in our homes. That doesn't happen in Central Texas. In Austin, it's really never happened. We've seen some plateaus, but we've never really lost a lot of value. So keeping that in mind, historically, Wimberley is about 2 to 4% average appreciation per appreciation on the average home sales price every year. And the other thing about Wimberley that you got to keep in mind, though, in that 02 and 06 timeframe, Wimberley was still a really, really small town, and it grew up a little bit. And I say grew up, that when it got a little bit bigger was kind of through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We had a lot of hippies moving out there, hippie artists. And you can still see that today with all the, you got the Wimberley Market Days, and you got all the boutiques, and there's a lot of people that are still doing art out there. Got a huge music scene out there now. A lot of musicians are moving out there. So that was kind of when Wimberley started to get going, but it was still a really, really small town. And it got a huge bump during COVID. A lot of people from Austin moved out. They wanted to put their kids in smaller schools, which Wimberley's got great schools, and really just wanted to be away from people and get some elbow room. So a lot of people moved out to Wimberley. They weren't afraid of that 45-minute drive from downtown Austin because most of them worked from home at that point. But anyway, what I'm getting at is I feel like our environment right now is really similar to the '02 timeframe. So what we saw during 2002 or that 2001, 2002, 2003 timeframe is we saw about a 6% average increase in sales price during that time, about 6% a year. That kind of blew my mind. And then in that '05, '06, '07 timeframe, that average popped up to about 9 to 10. So with 6.7% interest rates. Now, I know the cost of housing was cheaper back then. The median price back then was somewhere around $300,000 in '06. I know the houses were cheaper back then, but again, just looking at the interest rates, we saw really good appreciation in Wimberley during those time frames, which again shocked me. So what I'm gonna kind of put two and two together here, and I'm gonna say that we're more in line with that '02 market right now because we have less disposable income as an American society now. Gas is more expensive, meat's more expensive, all of our groceries are more expensive. You know that you're at the grocery store. Healthcare is more expensive. Everything is more expensive. And so we've gotten less disposable income for our housing. And if you're wondering about the median out there, if you're a median person, median is trailing by about 1.5% from that average. So again, '02 average was around 3.5% appreciation. Median was around 1.5 to 2, so just a little bit lower. So the median is still relevant, but I think the thing that makes it relevant is when you look at the time frame. When you have less money to spend, you're always going to have people that can buy expensive houses. But the normal person, instead of being kind of in the range of, call it 300 to 600,000, when there's less disposable income, that's going to drop to maybe 200 to 450. It's going to shrink a little bit and it's going to drop. So that's affecting the median. It's dropping that median down more than the average. But because people are still buying houses, there's still demand for the supply. The average price is going to keep going up. And that's what I see in 2024. So the overall prediction here is in 2024, huge caveat, as long as we see stable interest rates, we're at 6.7 now. It may, and I'm at the end of January right now shooting this. So we're at 6.7 now. If we fluctuate, call it to 6.8, 6.9 or 6.6, 6.5, somewhere in that band, I think we've got a good chance to see normal historical appreciation in Wimberley. I'm going to say we're probably going to see 3 to 4%, maybe popping up to 5 this year appreciation. So because it's easy math for me, I'm going to say a $400,000 house in Wimberley, which is actually kind of hard to find. But if it's a $400,000 house in Wimberley, I think we're going to see between call it $12,000 and $20,000 worth of appreciation this year. So if you're a home buyer, you may want to look at jumping in a little bit earlier if that $12,000 to $20,000 is important to you. Now, keep in mind on 6.7% interest, 20,000 more on your mortgage is really only in the neighborhood of about $50 to $70 a month. So it's not anything that's going to kill you. But if you're fiscally responsible like I am, and you're like, I'm going to buy a house, it's going to be in Wimberley, you may want to look a little bit sooner than later. And if interest rates go up, we're going to see the same thing we've seen in the last 2 years, which I think it's going to continue to stay, kind of stable with less appreciation, maybe 1 or 2%. But analysts that I'm talking to and the Fed and everybody else, there's nobody talking about interest rates going up significantly. I have heard a couple of people talking about interest rates potentially dropping up to 1% this year. If that happens, I think that, call it 3 to 5%. I think we may see 6 or 7% in Wimberley if we get an environment where interest rates start dropping here before the summer. because we've got a lot of pent up demand on the sidelines. I talk to lenders all the time. I've got a standing Monday show here on YouTube and on Facebook with a good buddy of mine, Steve Babcock. And, three or four lenders that I know, actually, it's been four lenders that I've talked to now, all say that they're getting a lot more applications, but people are still just kind of hanging out on the sideline. Buyers are still hanging out on the sideline. It's almost like they don't know whether to jump in. They might be scared that if they jump in now, they're gonna lose that interest rate if it drops more, or if they wait on the sideline, maybe the interest rates go up. They're just a little uncertain. But what we do know is there are a lot more pre-approvals that have been written over the last 2 months, and those buyers are standing by to make a decision. So, if we see stable interest rates, I think we're going to be right in that norm. 3 to 5%. If interest rates go up, that's going to drop, obviously. But if interest rates go down, I think we might be seeing 6, potentially 7 out in Wimberley. So, let me know your thoughts on this. If you agree with me or if you disagree with me, drop it in the comments. Guys, I am not a statistician. I've said it 1,000 times. I've got a science mind. I've got a science background, and I like looking at numbers. But that doesn't mean I'm not wrong. So if you disagree with my methodology, let me know yours, and I'll take a look at what the numbers say. And hell, I'll print a retraction on this if I think that I'm completely wrong on it. And likewise, if you find value in this, you find some value in somebody being real with you, subscribe to the channel, because that's what I do on this channel. I'm real. I analyze data. I do sell houses. I tell you a hell of a lot about the area and different submarkets and my favorite suburbs. So subscribe to the channel if that's something that you're interested in. And if you're looking to move to this area, give me a call, because I'd like to help you out with that. Now, here, take a look at this next video I've got on Wimberley, Texas. We'll see you on the next one.